This week, the dangers of intimacy, the agonies of hope, and finally getting to the truth. From 53 minutes and 33 seconds to 64 minutes and 18 seconds of Before Sunset, this is episode 18 of Don't You Know Me By Now.
Did you show up in Vienna that December?
And it's obvious to him that time is a lie.
Memory's a wonderful thing if you don't have to deal with the past.
If we didn't suffer, we wouldn't learn a thing.
Do I look any different?
I might have given up on the whole idea of romantic love.
Maybe.
Don't you know me?
You are gonna miss that plane.
Don't you know me by now?
The agonies of hope is very good. Kind of How Dare You.
Kind of a major theme of the piece.
The agonies of hope. That's good.
I mean, that's where Celine is, right?
That's where we're living in this. Yeah. You can see it in Jesse's eyes too, but yeah.
He's it's interesting to see their different approaches, particularly when we bear in mind where they were in the first film, that he has effectively shut himself down to, as he says, the possibilities of romantic love. Whereas she has insulated herself against that pain of hope, that pain of yearning, that pain of longing, by deciding that she never really wanted it anyway. And it was never real in the first place. And it always comes with compromises. And really, who wants it? Why not have a globe-trotting photojournalist boyfriend that you see regularly, like once every 9 weeks? He'll swing into town for a torrid weekend. Yeah. And that's it. It's so fascinating to see them take these two very relatable, very early 2000s Gen Z is growing up and having to face the reality that life is not perhaps going to be the way that they were promised it was going to be in the early 1990s. It feels so real. And I think that one of the things that makes Sunset so special, even as a part of this trilogy, is the way that we arrive at this point, is the way that we establish these perspectives on the world and then fold them together and simultaneously deconstruct them as we get here at the end of the piece. It's phenomenal. I mean, what a piece of filmmaking.
It's so extraordinary. Yeah. Yeah.
For
and so intimate in this car ride. To put them in the car for this last little bit.
Exactly right.
So brilliant.
It is absolutely fantastic. And the way that they are physically reacting to each other, I think, is almost entirely very good indeed, and occasionally extremely uncomfortable.
Very bad. Yes. Yeah, I would agree.
It's such an interesting choice to put them in the car at this point. Obviously, usually I do a little bit of background and go and look where they were in Paris at the time and kind of discover all this stuff about the location management for this film. But there's really nothing here except for the interesting detail that I think they might actually be driving from Quai Henri IV to the set for Celine's apartment, which is not the address that she gives. She gives an address which is in a much less spectacular part of Paris, quite frankly. The address that she gives is appropriate for her character, but is just a fairly conventional Parisian street and not this remarkable courtyard that we're going to get to in next week's reading. But this location is roughly 10 minutes by car away from where they are picked up by Philippe the driver. And I'm very curious about whether or not they just drove that route. Yeah. Because I'm trying to match it shot by shot, turn by turn, using Google Maps and trying to figure it out. And they could be, is as far as I can go with it. They might well be driving to the actual set of Celine's apartment, which is phenomenal. What a cool thing if that's true. And even if it's not, the fact that it feels as though it could be true is really striking.
I was trying to just figure out how they set up the camera, because it seems like it's a minivan, so there's got to be 2 rows, but they seem to be all the way pushed in the back. So they seem to have climbed all the way into the back of the minivan so that the cinematographer could be up in the front. They probably removed the first row of seats. That's my guess.
That would
I
be
know
my
it's a
guess
very
too.
silly thing to get hung up on, but I was just curious. I never thought of it because I see this particular scene in my head so often.
Sure.
And it just, when I saw that it was a minivan, I was like, well, wait a minute.
The spatial geometry doesn't quite make sense.
Quite line up.
It's the kind of thing that you had to do back in the early 2000s that you don't have to do now because of the separation of like the physical body of the camera from the lens of the camera.
Sure.
It's a thing that Danny Boyle, I believe, was one of the first people to do that when he started switching to digital video on the cusp of the millennium there. And he was one of the first people to have the idea of, well, why does this look like a camera? It's not a camera. It doesn't need to look like this at all. You can put all of the innards inside a backpack and walk around with a lens on a wire on a pole.
Oh my God.
And just shoot like that. That's how he shoots,
Wild.
28 days later, 28 weeks later.
Yeah. I never
That's
thought about
right
that.
at the time when we start getting super adventurous with what you can do with this new digital video technology. And now we don't have to do even that because you can just composite out in your CG rendering program of
Yeah.
choice. You can just
Yuck.
make it look like anything except
of.
kind of by garbage. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this looks great.
Paris has seen through a filter of, I don't know. Kind of looks like he shot this in Atlanta. Yeah, no, it's really, really powerful. And just the simple cinematic magic of driving a car through the streets of Paris.
Yeah.
With two incredibly skilled actors delivering absolute peak dialogue. The script is never stronger than it is in this sequence.
Yeah.
Although I know that some people are thrown out by the complexity. They see Celine as being less honest than I think Celine is. Here I am building a critical straw man for this film. That I have read criticism of this sequence, that they see Celine as being less honest and as playing games with Jesse. Whereas I read her as absolutely struggling with an enormous emotional complexity that is cracking now because of her exposure to him.
Yeah.
And is revealing this the fundamental hypocrisy in the way that she's been living her life, that she has been telling herself these stories to ward away the hurt, and now she can't anymore.
Which is what she says. I read your fucking book and it stirred things up for me. Yeah.
I find that so brilliant.
Yes.
Because of course I'm gonna reference back to Professor Tolkien, and I'm gonna reference back to his fantastic essay on fairy stories, where one of the virtues of fantasy fiction that he offers is this notion of recovery. That one of the reasons that we read stories is that we can be restored to, we can have our capacity for awe and for wonder and for terror restored to us, despite those faculties having been jaded by the real world. There's a point in your early life when the world is amazing and magical and awesome, and you have that feeling. And then as you grow up, you lose that feeling. And maybe, like Celine, you close the doors to that feeling and you pretend that they were never there in the first place. But Jesse's fiction has rekindled that within her. And I find that notion of recovery is a really valuable argument for the power of stories in themselves, but also for, I think, the value of new experience, right? She's just being forced to confront something new and is growing as a result.
How sad when you think that she saw the article for the book before she saw the book, right?
That's what she says. That's what she says. Yes.
If that's so, then she would have read already that he was married and had a son. She would have believed already that he was good and happy and that she was just this one-time romantic story. That would make reading that book extraordinarily painful, I think. Yeah.
It's hard though, right? Because here she is acknowledging that the book, even in her acknowledgement that they had sex back in Vienna, right? She reveals that she was lying earlier.
Women just do those things. He's like, do they? I'm also like, do they?
Skeptical.
I don't think they do.
French women do. French women do this.
I don't know.
But by revealing that his version of their night together is closer to the truth than she previously asserted, I think we're getting this idea that it is fundamentally true, right? We speculated back at the beginning of this season how fictionalized the book version of Jesse's experience is.
Right.
And it's interesting to think about, the degree to which Celine's relationship with Jesse became what we would now call a parasocial one, right? She has this connection to this guy.
Yes.
Simultaneously through memory, in which he is also not a real person, but also through art, through which he is not a real person.
Yeah, still not.
Which is fascinating. Like the layers of text there,
right,
I find really, really interesting. But yeah, the way that it has been, the way that confronting this truth has shaken her out of the stories that she has been telling herself are.
And the way she keeps appearing in his dreams also keeps her alive in his life, but not her. Like this other...
Exactly. Yeah, another kind of parasocial version.
Yes,
another fictionalized.
Right.
Based on a true person, but not really. It's so interesting that when he was recounting his dreams, because I remembered when we watched Waking Life that there's the sequence in this film when he recounts his dreams. And I remembered that we ended on her being pregnant. Oh my God, Ethan Hawke, maybe never better than in that one. Such wonderful. A walking wound in those moments. But I had kind of inserted digitally the memory that he accounts for the dream in Waking Life, that he describes the dream in Waking Life as the first dream that he tells her. But that's not what it is. I'd forgotten the train going by and she's on it, which of course is such a transparent metaphor.
Yes, that's how brains are sometimes though, especially with dreams. So
yours in particular, I think yours really celebrates the most. There's no real interpretation necessary. Your brain comes with a guidebook for
most
dream
of the
analysis.
time, yes.
It's phenomenal to see Jesse arrive at a place, because while Celine is cracking open, And we're seeing internal conflict between the person she was at the beginning of this film and the person that she is revealing herself to be.
Right.
I don't think we get that same kind of break from Jesse. It feels much more holistic and much more
Yes.
he's
Jesse's real feelings are much closer to the surface for him
Yeah.
than Celine's real feelings have been.
exactly
Yeah.
yeah.
And it
He's
explains,
living in the complexity a little
Yes.
more than she is.
Absolutely. But it does help to explain why she seems so cold in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like she was really protecting herself from someone that she thought was perfectly happy and had completely moved on. And so she had to be extra kind of removed.
Which just for me opens up even more avenues of speculation about her mental state right before this film begins. Like, what is she feeling when she walks into that building?
Yeah.
Particularly because I hadn't even really thought about this. She doesn't come in the door. The door is in the back of shot as we are pointing toward the audience there. She comes in some kind of side door. She comes in some kind of like, she
interesting.
slips into
She does
Shakespeare and
slip in,
Company
yeah.
and is very clearly like theatrically standing in the wings. She is neither a part of the performance nor a part of the audience.
Right.
Which of course situates her with regard to his book perfectly. Again,
Yeah.
right? The metaphor is transparent but immaculate.
Yeah. Very
I'm
good.
so fascinated by how she's feeling in that moment.
Yeah.
I know that next week, just to jump ahead a little bit, I know that next week we get the Easter egg that his book is on her shelf,
Oh.
that it is there.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested because I haven't looked ahead, and I'm interested to see how we frame that and how it is presented to the audience, like as a subtle reminder that this is the thing that drew them together.
Yeah.
We should get, I suppose, into some of the details that
Sure.
they talk about during this trip. I'm fascinated by the notion of Celine's psychiatrist friend, her therapist friend.
Yeah. How's she doing? She's a mess.
Really great, like obviously scripted, but really nice and natural, light on their feet. I
Yeah.
thought that worked. It's interesting that we're very much in this early 2000s. Therapy is a thing. It is a part of like the tapestry of society, but not everyone is doing it. Especially not the people who perhaps need it most.
Right. Which I think we're still there, right?
To a degree, maybe,
Yeah.
but I think to a lesser degree than 2004. I can't imagine a therapist in Paris in 2004 knowing Celine and not saying, "My darling, you need, listen to me. I have people I can refer you to."
It's interesting though. I don't know. We spend a lot of time poking fun at Celine's like mental health basically in this movie. I mean, not you and I. I mean like the script does.
Well, I think she is. She is like mostly. Do you think it comes
I don't know
from
if
her?
she doesn't use the same words. Like the way he says, you know, he calls her manic depressive,
Yes.
says you need anxiety or antidepressants or whatever.
during
in a
the
way that
sequence
she
in
never
particular.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even you and I will describe her as neurotic. And I think she
She self-describes as neurotic.
does she?
Yes.
Or does she say you think I'm neurotic? I don't remember
That's
exactly.
true.
I
Maybe
don't
she
think,
doesn't
I
actually.
don't think she self-describes. I think she's picking up. I don't know.
I feel
Anyway, just
comfortable in
something I
that
noticed.
diagnosis, I'll say that. I think that we see enough kind of self-doubt and moments of anxiety, moments of that over self-analysis.
Yes.
I wouldn't use that word in real life
Right.
about someone that I knew, but
Exactly.
in terms of like defining characters, I think it's a pretty appropriate one. But
Sure.
now that we understand a little more about where it's coming from, particularly as she heightens almost toward like a kind of such a loaded word and I hate using
Right?
it, but a kind of hysteria, right?
Yeah.
She's getting so close to a breaking point in this reading
Mm-hmm.
that I see a lot of her very present and superficial nervousness, anxiety earlier in the film
Mm-hmm.
as being part of this guise, as being part of this like position that she's adopting, this role that she's playing
Right.
almost.
Well, she even says like I had to let it all out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can see how much she's been bottling it in.
Yeah.
And it makes most of her other performance make more sense, especially again when she comes off very cold and distant in the beginning.
Exactly. Right. But while also adopting this affect of being very present and
Yes,
warm and
yeah.
like sincere, right?
Right.
It's kind
But
of,
in a very
oh, I'm here. We're going to be playful and it's going to be
Yes.
great. But also I'm really hurting and mad at you, but also in love with you and,
Yeah.
or in love with the idea of you. It's
right.
a hugely, hugely complicated thing. I was stunned with the acuity with which we hit like a major talking point of like gender politics in 2004, identity politics even in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that women want to be independent and should be independent, but that men therefore have no role in society, which I
Oh.
feel like is still a conversation we're having 20 years later, even though the resolution to that is be a person, If every single person is a person, then we're fine.
Yeah.
But it's one of those few moments that the film actually feels slightly ahead of the curve in terms of identity politics, in terms of gender politics for 2004, because I don't necessarily feel that we were quite in the mainstream at that point, at that time. And given that the rest of the film is just a little trapped in the late 1990s in terms of its political...
Yes.
Yes. Oh, is it trapped in a gauzy, hazy memory of yesterday?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that moment felt like a little bit present, a little bit provocative, a little bit progressive even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that was part of a Julie Delpy contribution.
I wonder about that so much through this part too, because it is so scrappy and it has a real kind of authenticity to it. It feels less written. We're happy to let the contradictions stand.
I like that a lot of times her English breaks in this scene. Like when she loses her cool, I suppose, she starts to drop little words and prepositions and things.
Yeah.
And I really like that. It feels very sincere.
Very authentic. Yeah. Yeah. I love too how we, without taking any attention to it at all, like we're not following an unfolding map of Paris. We're not paying attention to the time specifically. We just have this sense of the ticking clock. We just have this sense that this is all coming to an end.
So yeah, absolutely.
And as their physical intimacy increases, as their physical proximity increases, right? They are now far from being walking and basically free around one another, kind of orbiting one another, but still free to move.
Yeah.
Then we move on to the boat where they're more constrained, but still very free.
Still
like it's
very
a big
free.
boat.
Yeah, exactly.
But
and
now
that
they're
open air around them
jammed
and blowing
together.
her hair. And now, yeah.
Do you want to talk about the highs and lows of that physical proximity? We have the very famous inverted moment where she reaches for him and stops herself.
Yes.
Mirroring his action back in the first film.
Yes.
Poetic, beautiful.
So beautiful and so
heartbreaking.
touching and heartbreaking. The fact that he doesn't see it happen at all, even more so.
It just speaks volumes to the major theme, I think, of this entire trilogy, that these moments of connection are so precious because sometimes even when you reach out, you can't make the connection. It's incredibly powerful.
And the attention to detail in the filmmaking, like that can't have been an accident, right? Like that must have been a purposeful callback.
Wouldn't believe that anything that we see in this film is
an accident.
Yeah. There are so few
Understand.
things where you can go online and you can read like speculation about
Yes.
this isn't in the shooting script, or maybe it was ad-libbed. I don't
Yeah.
know. But a lot of this stuff is right there in the shooting script because their production was so short. But the fact that even then it feels so authentic. We're
Yes.
not drawing. We don't cut on that. We don't have an insert shot of her hand and his hair and the
Right.
sunlight and true golden
Ew.
hour habit, right? But a less secure filmmaker would absolutely give into those kind of impulses, I think. And I'm so glad that we don't do that. Let's talk about the worst moment of physical intimacy.
Yeah. Well, he reaches for her, she smacks his hand, says, "Don't touch me," and then demands to be let out of the cab. And both men are like, no, just keep driving. Don't listen to the hysterical woman, which is absolutely terrible.
Absolutely
Only
terrible.
saved by the fact that she doesn't request it again, that she seems in her character to not want to actually leave, but that's not enough. It's not good,
It's not
and I
enough.
don't like it.
Yeah. No, the moment
Yeah.
passes quickly, which is, I think, its only saving grace
Yes.
in terms of preserving any kind of sense of Jesse as a positive
Right.
male figure here. But yeah, it's weirdly uncomfortable right there in
Yeah.
that moment. We can't, I couldn't make out what it was that Philippe was saying. So I kind of
Yeah, I don't know.
decide for myself that he's saying, "Oh, I can't let you off here. Look, there's traffic. I physically can't let you off here. Give me a moment."
That might be nice. Yeah.
Maybe I can backfill that.
Yeah.
But that's
I like it.
that's me imagining a Band-Aid.
Well,
Imagining a Band-Aid is
For
maybe
this
sometimes
moment.
a nice thing to do.
And it really is, I suppose the other gratifying
That
thing
is
is
so
that when she
perfect.
says,
Like
"Don't
his
touch
eyes
me,"
are swimming,
Jesse just
and
backs
he is
completely
clearly
off.
deep
I mean,
in it.
as this is
And
bare
then,
minimum.
right, he
as
shifts
should.
and
Right.
says,
But it is
"Well, you say that, but
a
you don't
relief,
remember us,
a real relief.
having sex."
Right.
And he doesn't try.
And the idea that he's trying to like lighten her mood, that he's trying to help her feel better, even though he feels so shitty, I find very romantic. And then to find him be just like flabbergasted that actually she does remember it's at least amusing. Although I find it weird that she says that that's just a thing that women do.
Yes.
That's weird. That she would
Positioning-
lie about it is not necessarily weird. But to make it like
under those circumstances in
Right.
particular. Yeah.
Yes, especially going back and saying, she thinks that he's so happy. She does not want to reveal how much she has missed him and thinks about him and how much this has stirred up at this point. So I can see her glossing over it, although it's so strange at the time because you don't see her like fighting the impulse. You know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
she lies about it, she lies so quickly.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about this because I think that is perhaps a criticism of the film's emotional honesty.
Yeah.
It's emotional transparency to the audience.
Yeah.
Is that we've seen Celine lie when we know that she is lying, and it turns out that she's just not a very good liar,
Right.
actually. But when the script demands it, she lies like she's a trained actress. She lies like, I don't know, she's Julie Delpy or someone,
Yeah.
Is that playing fair, or do we feel... Is there an argument perhaps that she has spent so long denying that they had sex?
No.
No?
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think it 100% works for me in the film in any way. And I'm not even sure that I recognize her need to lie about it, like to
Yeah.
change the subject, to not want to talk about it, sure. But to actively lie the way she does is odd. I don't know.
Yeah, and even when he presses her on the
Yeah,
subject,
it's like, no,
that
no,
she
no,
doubles
no.
down on the
Yeah.
lie. Yeah.
It's strange.
And tries to gaslight him through it.
Yeah.
It's odd. It's part of something that we do not infrequently in these first two films in particular of speculatively situating sex as this thing that is just much more special for women than it is for men. That it was more crucial to her
Yes.
than it was to Jesse.
Although that's hard to imagine for Jesse because Jesse, I think, is
Right. But we know that.
Yeah.
We can see, I think, a little more clearly what a romantic this boy is.
But like Gen Xers in general cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been kind of tangentially revisiting a little bit of the oeuvre of Mr. Kevin Smith, a very similar late 90s kind of voice, a kind of progressive independent film voice in the 1990s. And there's something there too of sex being in the kind of post-AIDS crisis era, this very progressive thing that women are embracing, but still this kind of hypocritical demand for like sanctity around feminine sexuality.
Yeah.
That it means more, it matters more. It's somehow more significant for women than it is for men. And this film is kind of echoing that. And I don't think that either set of films is a primary text as far as this goes. I think that this is something in the water, at that
sure.
time, but it's
Yeah.
certainly something that Celine seems to feel, right? I think it connects to this pushback that she gives about being thought of as a slut, being thought of,
Right.
her word, of course. But I find that, I find it unusual, and I find it a little challenging in terms of my understanding of the character, particularly because the sex is then not used as a key to unlock her physical memory of their night together. Do you know what I mean? It's not used as a symbol of their entire relationship by either one of them. It's not, the turning point in their conversation here is not, but we had sex and that means something, not to
Right.
get all
Yeah.
vanilla sky about it.
Our
Maybe.
souls are knit. Yeah.
It's, it's a challenging bit of gender politics there, I think, that we're not even sure what we're working towards, let alone how successfully we're
Yeah.
achieving it. But it's because it's in this maelstrom of realization of epiphany almost, and certainly a maelstrom of honesty, right?
Yeah.
She is aware now that something is being said that can't be taken back, but it's also something that needs to be said. It's something that
Yeah.
needs to be. Have you found yourself in a similar situation in your life where you've been in a high pressure environment where the clock is ticking and suddenly you realize you have to say the thing that you weren't sure you were going to say at the beginning of the relationship? Is that...
Ooh. I don't know. That's so specific. Probably. I mean, you've been in a relationship with me for a long time, so you know that I can't keep things in that I want to say. Like it doesn't last long anyway.
No, that's true. And I don't think that you...
I don't often try to.
I
don't
want
think.
to try and use like careful language when I'm talking
Yeah.
about Celine here, because I don't want to sit in judgment of her.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you are more emotionally transparent. I think that you are more emotionally accessible to yourself, which allows you to be more emotionally communicative. I don't know how much of this is occurring now to Celine for the first time. Right? How conscious is she of the process of shutting herself down? Because Jesse clearly is conscious of that process. You know, when he's talking about the fact that they haven't had sex more than, what is it, twice in 4 years or whatever number it is that he gives.
Something.
He's obviously aware of what has happened. He's thinking these thoughts, and writing the book is clearly a kind of flare in the sky. Maybe not for Celine, but kind of for himself, right? It's a way of externalizing this thing that is very important to him, so that he can have a relationship with that thing out in the world. I'm curious about whether or not Celine has constructed this shield for herself consciously, step by step, or if she just finds herself making these safer, less bold, less romantic, less vulnerable choices, which I can't even really judge her for, because God knows being vulnerable in the world is hard enough, and being vulnerable as a woman in the world, I can't imagine.
Which is basically what she says, right? And it just that I like that she admits that she hasn't actually been like totally screwed over. She's just been in these relationships that didn't feel the way she thought that they ought to, that just weren't exciting or romantic in the way that she thought they were going to be. And then had this idea that then you just take what life gives you, which I've certainly felt before in my life. Like I think most of my relationships had been the most convenient relationship at the time, you know, and I suppose because I always had like other crushes and things, I never felt too, I don't know. I didn't feel that it was a reflection on my capacity for love in the way that she does.
Sure.
But I certainly understand how she landed there. And that terrible, she said, it made me feel cold, like love wasn't for me. And ooh, that's tough. I love this idea that she expressed something to him and he took it with him that day, and she never got it back. That there was this hollow space in her where the love she gave went away. It's really interesting.
I like that very much. I also like that I don't think the film believes that is true.
No. And I know it. Well, I don't know. I think the film does believe that it's true, but also that it's back in the car with her now. That she's sent that, you know what I mean? Like this piece of her and her like romanticism and her agonizing hope, as you said, had left with him. And then when he came back and it's in the car right now she has to like look it in the face and say, no, this is still a part of me. This is still a thing that I got tangled up in this one guy.
See, I think that is true to an extent, but I think that this film, and absolutely textually the third film in this series, believes that is a bad thing.
Oh, yeah.
Believes that Celine did not comport herself properly. She did not comport herself as a person should between these two films. That this protection that she has raised, this numbing that she has experienced, is the product of a character flaw rather than like Jesse's fault or the fault of a specific night in Vienna.
Right.
That she is not living her life. She is not living the great life, right? Which is so interesting that Jesse circles all the way back to the great life here. I find that extraordinary. I wanted to comment on exactly what you were talking about the fact that she explicitly points out, we take the time to establish her relationships haven't been disastrous.
Right.
They haven't been ruinous. They haven't even necessarily been bad.
Yeah.
They've just kind of been hollow. I love pairing that with the kind words that they both have for Jesse's wife.
Yes.
I find that so grown up.
Yeah.
So mature.
That her first instinct is to kind of defend the wife, maybe not even defend, but just help to explain. And even though she says something I don't agree with, when she's like, of course all of her love has to go to the baby. And I'm like, well, I mean, not all of it, but
wow.
Yikes.
Right? But then you think back to Celine's relationship with her mother and the way that her mother talks to her about sex and talks to her about family and talks to her about love and connection, right? We have like that made symmetrical with Jesse recreating the story of his parents. Getting pregnant early, marrying because that's the thing that you do.
That's what you do.
And then just kind of living this unfulfilled life.
Right.
It's a really interesting and quiet take on like the relationship between boomers and Gen X. You know?
Yeah,
it's like, oh shit, we are doing all the same things over again. This is terrible. I find that so fascinating. But yeah, the idea that we can trust our audience to come with us, trust these actors to communicate it, right? But trust our audience to come with this much more nuanced and complex emotional palette that there isn't just an easy disaster to point to. There isn't just a bad thing that happened
Right.
that should not have happened. Rather, it's just actually things have been fine. And that is just like grit in my emotional mill here. You know, that is
Yeah.
just like, that is in my emotional gears. I'm just having trouble processing the fact that I have these big feelings
Right.
about things that are kind of okay and seem to be the same as everyone else.
That's
You
the
know?
main thing, I think. Yeah, is this idea that the love between Jesse and Celine is something very unique that not everybody gets, and that the love that they are experiencing with other people is something that is common, that is easy to come by, not easy to, I don't know, live with your whole life.
I think that the film believes that to be true. I think that the film asserts that. Do you think that that is true? Do you think that this is a peculiar kind of love? Or do you think it's, I suppose my question is there something magically, alchemically special about Jesse and Celine? Do you think that they are soulmates? Or do you think that it is the courage with which they open themselves up to each other and to their experience of Vienna that makes their relationship so special? That there's a degree of compatibility, of course. There's a degree of spark between them. There's a degree of spark between them on the train before they ever talk. Right? We get that immediately in the first film. Is it all in principle or is it in praxis here? Right? Like is it the love itself is special, or is it the active being in love, the verb form of love that is special between them?
Yeah. I think that the love itself is special, which makes the act of that love just easier and more prolific than, just kindness and affection.
Sure.
You know?
So what is your perspective as someone who has had, as you said, major relationships, but also always like myriad crushes and infatuations? You're just a very like romantically available person. You're kind of open to these moments of spontaneous connection in the world. Do you feel that then there are just a host of special people with whom you might connect?
No.
Because normally when we talk about soulmates, we're talking about like a vanishingly small number and oftentimes like either metaphorically or quite literally a single person somewhere in the world.
Yes, and I don't think that I believe in a single person somewhere in the world, but I do believe that there's a much smaller pool of people that you can have like a really dynamic, romantic, long-term relationship that stays exciting and passionate and fulfilling, I suppose, where there are, I think, innumerable people that you can have a super exciting night with, or a super
A night in
exciting
Vienna, for
few
example.
months with, or even a year or two. But for a lifetime, I think it's very rare.
But it's that combination of a special connection, an unusual connection, and the work of a relationship, the care and attention, the
choosing
cultivation
of each other, the cultivation, and the fact that like the two people have to both feel the things so strongly that they both put as much time and attention and I would say work, but it doesn't feel like work when you're feeling those things, but just like attention, I would say, into the maintenance of the relationship and into the something better than maintenance, like building it into something bigger and different that evolves with the two of you as you go through your life.
They could have been so good together, Jesse and Celine. It's sad. He's obviously just going to walk her to her door and then say goodbye forever because he has to be at the airport. Philippe is waiting there at the end of that little tiny little alleyway there that he's driven into. We will pick up the end of this story in next week's session. Next week, the last real reading of Before Sunset. Then we'll do a wrap-up bonus episode covering the credits. But next week, from 64 minutes and 18 seconds to 76 minutes and 57 seconds. This movie is so short, is the other thing.
So perfect.
Oh my God. It's so brisk. It's so brief. Yeah. We're going to wrap up next week with Celine's Apartment and one of the best endings of a film ever.
Of all time. Completely agree.
Gonna call that right there. Can't wait to talk about it. Elizabeth, thank you so much for this week. It's been a pleasure.
Always.
Don't You Know Me By Now is a Next Word production. You can support the show, join our community of listeners, and get access to bonus episodes and lots more by visiting patreon.com/nextword. You can find show notes and other episodes at knowmepod.com. That's knowpod.com. And you can reach us at knowmepod on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Thanks for listening.